What is up, everybody? How's it going? I'm bored today, so we're going to be watching this video called How Tropes About Women in Video Games. How Tropes About Women in Video Games Go Beyond the Game by Steph Rennick. So that's what we're going to be watching, and I'm going to be commenting on it. I'm kind of interested in what they're going to say. This only has 858 views. More views than I get, but let's see what they have to say.
I love stories. I'm particularly fascinated by the tropes, the recurring motifs, the conventions, the ideas that stick, that keep appearing year after year, creator after creator. Sometimes tropes manifest as characters, like the knight in shining armor. Other times they're ideas, like you can't change the past. Tropes appear in the mechanics too.
You know, a lot of people might go after her looks, but what I'm going to say is I kind of like the dress. Is that a mushroom, or are those strawberries and flowers? Hey, I think it's kind of cute.
We tell and experience stories. The credits come at the end.
But wait, maybe I shouldn't be commenting on women's looks at all. Is that wrong in today's age? Like, if I actually complimented her, maybe I shouldn't talk about looks at all or anything. I shouldn't look at what I see and comment on it. That's probably bad.
Of the film, the table of contents at the book's beginning. Tropes, in short, are patterns we come to expect, and which can surprise and delight us when subverted. I'm a philosopher. I don't meet the trope of one. I don't have a beard, for one thing, and the accent's all wrong. If we always told the same stories the same way, then mine wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah, what is like the ratio there? How many women versus male philosophers?
While women are making progress in undergraduate philosophy, they are still underrepresented in academic philosophy, especially at higher levels. They make up only about 20 to 30% of the faculty, which suggests a problem with women pursuing advanced degrees and careers in the field.
Why is that a problem? Maybe women don't like philosophy. Maybe they like other things. I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing if a lot of women don't go into philosophy. Maybe it's not their thing.
But it's open to us to explore various possible worlds and futures in our stories, if we want to. Telling new stories often involves transcending old tropes, but not all patterns are obvious. Some need to be exposed so that new stories can be told. One of my favorite storytelling media are video games. Maybe that's not surprising. They're very popular. More than 3 billion people worldwide play video games. But what might surprise you is that roughly half of those people are women. And yet, women characters in games, when they appear at all.
I've heard a stat, though, is that they consider gaming even to be mobile gaming, and I don't really consider you much of a gamer if you play, like, mobile games like Candy Crush. I mean, you are a gamer in a sense, like, and especially if you're playing, like, Diablo 5 or 4 on your phone, then yeah, you're like a gamer, but just playing, like, Candy Crush and little games on your phone every once in a while, I wouldn't really consider you, like, a gamer. You know, like, I'm a gamer. Like, I'm a real gamer. So, just someone who's on their mobile phone, they're including that in the stats, so it's a little bit skewed. There's a lot more women players on mobile than there are on console. So, I would say if you're not talking about mobile, that stat is reduced quite a bit. Like, let's just look up this stat. How many girl gamers on PC versus male gamers?
The gender gap in PC gaming is very small. Recent data shows almost equal numbers of male and female gamers, sometimes with a slight edge to either group. Overall, the gaming population is nearly 50-50 male and female.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong on that. That's exactly like her stat. Well, let's just look up mobile gaming and see how that fits into it. Who plays more mobile games, girls or boys?
Women often make up slightly over half the mobile gaming audience,
Okay.
and sometimes play more often or spend more. In the US, they represent 55% of mobile gamers, and globally, they are key economic drivers with higher engagement.
All right, so I mean, I was slightly correct in thinking that girls maybe game on their mobile phones more, but just in general, even if it was a girl or a boy, I don't really consider mobile gaming to be like real gaming. Maybe that's just me being an asshole, but you could consider it gaming. I just wouldn't consider it the epitome of gaming or what, like how gaming started, let's say. I consider gaming like you got a controller in your hands. And yeah, a fucking phone is made like a controller now, and especially now they have like these backbone things you can place on your phone and basically turn your phone into a controller. So maybe I am kind of like backpedaling here a little bit and considering it more and saying, yeah, mobile gaming is gaming. Gaming is gaming, but I guess I'm gonna keep a little bit of air of arrogance here and say, like, I don't think it's the same type of gaming.
Women characters in games, when they appear at all, are less likely to be protagonists, are more likely to be sexualized, and often reinforce harmful stereotypes. Identifying and subverting tropes about women and women characters has allowed us to make progress, moving past the damsel in distress, allowing a greater diversity of heroes to take center stage, and so on.
I like a lot of games that have female leads, like Tomb Raider, Hellblade. What is it? The one in Hellblade, I think. Or it's the one where she's dealing with like psychological issues. I think it might be Hellblade. There's this one with the rats, Requiem. When she has like this little kid. There's tons of the one. I'm like not getting any of the names right, but the one where it's the open world game it's the exclusive for PS5, Horizon, I think it might be. So I mean, there is tons. Probably not as many female leads, but there are a lot of female leads.
But there's still progress to be made. Game worlds continue to restrict women and other minorities even more than the real world does.
Also, we have a lot of games now, like Far Cry, for the last couple entries, have allowed you to pick which sex you want to be. Also, they did that in Dishonored. You could pick if you wanted to be a male or a female thief in that game. And it actually had different story. Well, it was the same storyline, but they would build the storyline in and it would all match up with each, no matter if you picked a male or a female. So in a lot of games now, they're actually giving you the choice at the beginning if you want to have a male or a female lead in the game, which I think is kind of cool. I mean, especially if the story matches up and it all matches the same, I see no problem with it. But I also see no problem with there being a slight edge going one way or the other. Would we be saying it's a problem if women happen to be the leads in games more than men? Would we consider that a problem, or is it only a problem because men are more of the leads?
I think that if we can spot what's going wrong, if we could identify more troublesome tropes, we could do something more about it. Tell more aspirational stories set in a greater range of worlds. If we can find the patterns, we can subvert them. But video games pose a real challenge for this sort of detective work. One reason is that how a game's story goes can depend on player choices. It's unlikely, and in many games impossible, to see everything in a single playthrough. That makes it difficult to get the perspective needed to spot the tropes. Another reason is the sheer amount of content in many games. Whereas a film might have somewhere in the region of 20,000 words of dialogue, a game might have 500,000, spoken by hundreds of characters. And all of those characters matter. All are an opportunity to tell a story, to show us something about the world.
I mean, not all of them matter equally. Like an NPC that has some dialogue and you're just going to pick up, like you're doing a fetch quest or something and they're just giving you a piece of paper. Like, it's like, oh, here's the document. It's like that's not as important as someone who is actually a part of a story and more involved than just someone who's just handing you over something on a fetch quest. So they're not all equal.
And to open our eyes to new possibilities. So it's a real challenge. But I think a challenge worth meeting. One key place to look for tropes is in dialogue, in who gets to speak, what they say, who they say it to, and what they use language to do. Dialogue is a significant mechanic in many games and where much of the storytelling occurs. But until now, there hasn't been a way to systematically measure and monitor patterns in video game dialogue. And so we built the Video Game Dialogue Corpus, the VGDC, and undertook the largest ever study of video game dialogue. Thousands of...
It's like looking for a problem that didn't exist. Like, if people are enjoying the games, if there's telling good stories, does it matter the demographics and how many girls there are versus how many boys there are? I should be saying female and male. Sometimes I'll still revert to saying boys and girls, like I'm a fucking teenager or something. But yeah, how many males there are versus how many females there are. Does it really matter? It should only matter in context of the story. It should start with the story, and however many males or females are involved in that story is based on where the story's going. And what she seems to want to do is try to make it even at the start, try to make it split right down the middle between male and females, and then start telling the story from there. But you're limiting yourself when you do that. You're not telling a true story. You're starting with prerequisites and rules in writing before you even start writing. And you're definitely limiting yourself in storytelling if you start with rules. It's just dumb.
Lines of code, millions of words of dialogue from RPGs or role-playing video games, and more than 13,000 characters analyzed. So what did we find? First, men speak twice as much as women. If we count up all the words of dialogue in our data set, 65% of them are spoken by characters who players would consider to be men. And this pattern of men speaking more than women holds in 94% of the games we studied. A key lesson from the data is that more diverse protagonists aren't enough.
I wonder how this would hold true to movies, like if it would carry over to movies.
The hero of the story isn't all that matters. There was a bias for men's dialogue amongst both minor and major characters. It's not all bad news. The proportion of women's dialogue has slowly increased since the 1980s, but at the current rate, it will still take more than a decade to reach parity. And some very recent games had less than a quarter.
Isn't that a weird statistic to try to go for, though? Like, you got to look at the stories in the context of the stories and what they're saying and why there's male and female characters in there. You can't say that it's somehow all these stories are wrong for having the makeup and ratio of male versus female characters that they did, and say we have to meet this imaginary standard of 50%. Who said it has to be 50%? Why does it have to be 50%? And as I said earlier, if it was more females talking, would we still be trying to meet this 50% standard? Such a weird, it doesn't make sense. There's no reason to believe that this 50-50 thing is the best way to tell a story. It's dumb. It's an imaginary thing. She says, oh, if we can reach 50%, then somehow we're going to be able to tell better stories because we're going to be subverting expectations, which if you're always at 50%, you're not subverting anyone's expectations. You're drawing a line and making a rule in storytelling.
Order of dialogue spoken by women. But if we drill down into the data, we find something interesting. Individual women characters do not, on average, speak less than individual men.
All right, I was throwing together this on my phone, and I didn't catch this when it was live, but she basically just admitted that they speak the same amount of dialogue. So if you compare a singular woman to a singular man, they speak the same amount of dialogue. It's just because there's more men, that's why men speak more in video games. So she just destroyed her own argument.
Rather, there are far fewer of them to do the talking. Even in games with women protagonists, or games where you can choose the gender of the player character, we often hear from men more. And this pattern holds at all levels, from those characters who speak the most to those who speak the least. Wherever you look, there are more men talking. Now, that's not to say that every game should have an equal distribution.
Okay.
But when there's such...
All right. She's getting into my, this is my complaint, so let's see what she has to say about it.
a strong pattern holding in so many games, it should make us pause. Of course, speaking more...
Pause for what reason? What is the value that we're seeking for us to pause? What are we trying to achieve by looking at this statistic? Well, I mean, maybe it's interesting, by itself. Okay, more men speak in video games, but what does that mean? And does what it mean, is that a bad thing? And she's yet to say why it is a bad thing. Why is it a negative thing that men are speaking more in video games? Is it just for the simple fact that it's not equal, and equal to be equal means good? Well, why does to be equal mean good in this sense, in this context?
At the end of the story, let's zoom in on one character to see why. In Final Fantasy VII, released in 1997, a character named Jessie has 32 lines of dialogue. She spends about a quarter of those lines showing off her technical mastery as a mechanic and explosives expert. About a quarter...
I've never played a Final Fantasy game in my life. I believe it's turn-based. I'm not positive. I know some of the later ones weren't turn-based, but I think the original ones are like a turn-based type game, and I'm not really into turn-based games. Sometimes, but it just wasn't my vibe.
Dispensing information to the player about how to play the game, and about half showing off her personality. In the 2020 remake, Jessie is given almost 10 times as many lines of dialogue, which sounds like a good thing, right? Well, now only 10% are dedicated to her technical mastery, and more than 80% to showing off her personality. Oh, hello, friend. And most of that consists of her flirting with the male player character. Now, flirting's not a bad thing, but when it becomes a trope, when women characters are given the same narrow range of roles and stories again and again, it's a missed opportunity.
Right, but what was her character in Final Fantasy? I think she said 7, and her name was Jessie. What was her character? Is she a flirty type person? Is she outgoing? Is that something that her character as written would do? Or is it just an exploitation? Like they're just using it to be gratuitous and say, oh, women are flirty and just objectifying her. There's a difference. If it's written into the story in some sense and it makes sense in relation to the other characters, then it shouldn't be a problem. Maybe you could say something like, oh, you shouldn't be writing that type of character in the first place, or you could have problems with a woman being so flirtatious, but it is also the truth that a lot of women are flirtatious. Maybe it's just telling a story of a woman who is flirtatious, and like she said, it's not bad for a woman to be flirtatious. She's saying it's bad for women to be flirtatious if it becomes a trope, if it becomes commonplace, but if we look at the story... You have to look at the story. She's not telling what the story is or what the background to her character is or the relationship between the characters. I mean, I've never played it, so I don't know, but it seems like she's only saying that things should be equal and that them being equal means in some way that it's good. And also she's saying right now that she shouldn't be flirtatious, and if she is flirtatious, then it's just matching with the stereotypes and the tropes. So is it ever okay? When is it okay for a woman in a video game to be flirtatious? And when is she's not just following a trope? That's kind of my question.
We found other tropes in what people say. Women characters were more likely to apologize, less likely to swear, and more likely to be polite. When giving you a quest...
Wow, why is that a bad thing? That sounds like a good thing. They're more polite. They don't cuss as much. More likely to apologize? I mean, apologizing for things is a good thing, right? You shouldn't be apologizing if you didn't do anything wrong, but if you believe you've done something wrong, then you should apologize. But maybe she's like, why are they apologizing so much? Why are they making it into the story that these women even need to apologize? What I would like it if she gave a specific example of a video game and the story and how, in the context of the story, it doesn't make sense. That's what I would like to see. But she's just relying on statistics, saying that the statistics aren't allowing us to tell. It's getting us trapped in these tropes without really explaining how her version of things would make better storytelling.
Women were more likely to refer to family, whereas men had a much wider range of motivations. And characters treat you differently, depending on the gender you choose for your player character. Patterns you mightn't notice if you only played a game once. For example, in Stardew Valley, if you choose to play as a man, you're offered ale and pasta and assumed to know your way around a joystick. If you play as a woman, it's wine and salad, and you're told, I didn't think you know how to work a joystick so well, but it seems you're experienced. Now, these tropes don't exist in a vacuum. Video game culture is rife with...
Well, it also might, art mimics life. So a lot of those times it might be true what the game is saying. Maybe a man would want ale and would know his way around a joystick, and maybe a woman would want salad or whatever she said. I don't think it's necessarily bad that we fit into different categories. Or in this case, the creator of this game, that's what he conceived, or it's their version or vision of what they think how those two characters separate. And it's like she would like a version where it's exactly the same. There's no difference between the characters. Isn't that why you would choose a male character versus a female character, is for the differences between them, right? If I'm picking a male character, I'm picking it because I want it to be male and I want it to have male characteristics. If a woman is picking a woman character, they do it for the fact that they want to play as a woman and live vicariously through the avatar, right? So they want it to be different from men. She's almost saying, like, games that you're allowed to choose to be a male or a female at the start, that all of their all their move sets, everything about them should be the same. The only difference should be the cosmetics. But that would be dumb. Like, I'll take it back to when I was talking about Dishonored. Like, the woman version has different move sets. She has different capabilities. She's like more sneaky. She's not. She doesn't fight as much. She relies more on stealth tactics than, let's say, the man does, where he relies more on brute force. And that is the entire reason why people pick different sexes when they start out playing a campaign. So it seems what she's saying is she just wants everything to be different. The only thing that's different is the cosmetics. But then you're just taking away the joy of being able to have that choice to begin with.
Sexist attitudes, with women being treated as outsiders to the gaming community, and players and developers alike being the target of online gendered abuse and sexual harassment. Our most recent study of British women players found that more than 40% agreed that playing video games is one of the things they most look forward to each day. Yet many women reported feeling guilt and shame about doing so and would be embarrassed to call themselves a gamer. Right now, the trope of a gamer doesn't include them. Obviously, there's work to be done on a number of fronts, in the industry, in the algorithms, in society.
I can get on board with women feeling, especially on like online games, if you're a woman. Like, my girlfriend will deal with this a lot of times. People will be really rude to her just because they hear her girl voice, her female voice. They'll immediately just start treating her differently. So I can understand that argument in a online multiplayer space, but that doesn't really cross over to like single player campaigns and things like that. I mean, it's a entirely different argument. So yes, I do believe that I don't believe a woman would be uncomfortable calling herself a gamer, but I do believe that some women feel uncomfortable online because some men will just start giving them shit immediately. But not all men. I mean, it's very few and far in between that men will just start harassing a woman out of nowhere just because she's a woman. But it does happen to women more often than I would say it happens to men. And it's definitely happened to my girlfriend a few times where just because she's a woman online, she'll be treated a different way, or people will just immediately start fucking with her. But I don't think that really relates to single player campaigns or storytelling or anything like that.
Society. But we can't neglect the importance of the stories we tell. Increasing the number of women characters and of non-binary and gender minority characters is a key step in addressing gender bias in video games. And if our stories reflect and shape what we take to be possible, then telling a greater range of stories, featuring a diverse cast of characters, might influence not only fictional worlds, but the one we find ourselves in. Tropes shape and reflect our expectations. If an idea is too unintuitive, it doesn't survive to become a trope. But what we imagine to be possible, the ideas we regularly entertain, need not align with what's actually possible. Old ideas might have served a purpose, but now only restrict us. New ideas need to be shared before we know what will stick. The boundaries of possibility need to be pushed. Finding patterns, identifying tropes, helps us understand what we've taken for granted. Some stories are worth retelling, and sometimes we need to add new volumes to our collection. Spotting entrenched patterns and subverting tropes is one way to make progress. And where the tropes end...
It's not always about subverting expectations or subverting tropes. Yes, it's a good way to be artistic and tell a story. You're more than welcome to subvert tropes, but people also like tropes, and they're tropes for a reason. They're long-lasting and become ingrained in people's minds. They become ideals in storytelling, things that people look forward to, something that's nostalgic in the way that we tell stories. But you're more than welcome to go out and make your own video game. People are doing it all the time now in the indie space. They are not taking upon tropes or legacy or any rules that the past has made for making video games. There's all types of video games being made nowadays with female characters, male characters, animal characters. There's a huge space out there, and I don't think we should be looking just at the statistics and trying to meet this imaginary standard of 50% while still telling good stories. We have to look at the stories themselves and the context in which the actual male and female characters play a part in the story, not just the fact that they're male or female and don't meet a certain imaginary standard. And I'm repeating myself a little bit here, but she was repeating herself a lot as well. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want, I don't think we should, like, fall into tropes and continue to tell the same stories over and over and over again. But I don't think there's anything wrong with telling a good old-fashioned story with a new twist, and there's nothing wrong with subverting expectations either. But I think that the playing field is open for everyone right now. I don't think anyone's being held back in the industry. I don't think women aren't getting a voice or men aren't getting a voice. I think we're in a pretty good place now with equality. And I mean, just look at the gaming industry. Look at statistics about how many women are graduating from college. It's actually more than men. And again, I'll bring up, what would we be looking for this same middle ground of 50% if it was actually women who were more of the leads, who had more of the voice acting parts? Would we look at that as a bad thing? Or would we just accept that because we reversed how it was? So in order for it to be moral, or in order for us to be telling good stories or subverting expectations, it needs to be 50%, is kind of her argument. And I don't agree with it. I think she's missing basically the entirety of what storytelling is. It's not being boxed in. It's not creating rules for yourself. So, and she's somewhat saying that in the same way, like, we don't need to tell the same stories. You don't need to box yourself in. But by saying, oh, you can't tell a story that's a trope, or you can't do it this way, it has to be this 50% thing, she's actually entering in the fact that it needs to be a certain way.
And marks possibility space that hasn't yet been explored, where we can tell new stories, aspirational stories, set in the sorts of worlds we'd like ours to be. Thanks.
All right, well then you go write that story. I think women are more than capable and have all the opportunities of as men do now. So go out and create whatever story you want to create, and if people like it, they're gonna play it. But people like what they like. If they don't like it, they're not gonna like it, and if they don't like it, you can't be mad at them because, you know, it's subjective, right? What people like, it's subjective. You can't say, oh, this person is sexist or racist because they enjoy more films or more video games that represent themselves more or have more of themselves in it, like with a white lead or something. Like, people are allowed to like what they like, and that's fine. It doesn't mean they hold prejudice against people because they enjoy living vicariously through video games or movies. Anyways, if you enjoyed my rambling, I did ramble a bit. I smoked a little weed before this, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I enjoyed talking about it. I like doing these videos where I just ramble and talk about stuff, get some shit off my chest. So maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I don't know. What was this, 33 minutes? All right, later.